I'm going to show you what I personally think is the best strategy if you only have $10,000 in crypto and want to see hyper growth this bull market and make some life-changing money. Now, first thing I want to say is life-changing money, it's going to be different for everybody, right? But if you have $10,000, making say $15,000, $20,000, it's not really going to be life-changing money. Making more like 30 to 50K, that's going to start to get life-changing, but even for some people, it might not be life-changing money whatsoever, especially for somebody that has say $150,000. Well, $30,000 is not going to be life-changing money whatsoever. So keep in mind, goals are going to depend on your portfolio. If you guys want me to make a full tutorial, just like I'm going to do with this video, if you have $1,000, if you have say $5,000, if you have say $8,000, right? Let me know. I'm also planning on making one that is if you have 25K, if you have 100 grand, if you have a million, so on and so forth, because the strategy does differ. So stay tuned, drop a like, subscribe with notifications, and let me know when you want to see that down below in the comment section. But let's talk about it. Today, we need to implement a flywheel into a $10,000 portfolio. The reason why is because if we just take $10,000 and we park that amongst, say, the top assets like Bitcoin and then Ethereum and then Solana, like most people end up doing, let's just say. Ultimately, let's just say we have about 33% here, 33% here, and then obviously 33% in the SOL. Well, SOL, it's already late in the market, which means that our time is running out. The time that we can make life-changing wealth is slowly passing by. We're already, started the bull market. Yes, there's still gains to be made, but there's not nearly as many gains to be made as if you invested back in January of 2023, right? So SOL probably has about a 2 to 4x left in it, right? And that's being generous in my personal opinion. It's already at crazy market caps. It's already hit all-time highs. Ethereum has lagged behind, but Ethereum still has institutional grade money. Institutions still prefer Ethereum, so that's where they're going to park their money. Still got some fuel left in the tank. Ethereum, once again, is probably going to be more like a 2 to 3x left in this market, whereas Bitcoin over here, I'm expecting an absolute top of 2x. Let's just say 1.5 to 2x, because I do think that it could go to $150,000 or so, which means on average, if you're to invest in these assets, equal allocations, you're probably going to end up with roughly $30,000. Not bad whatsoever, but that is $20,000 in profit, and that is being generous, right? It's not even assuming the worst case scenario like 1.5x or even less, or 2x or less, or 2x or less, right? It's not assuming the worst case scenario. This is like the best case scenario in my personal opinion if you invest in these assets and don't do anything. Now, granted, you could invest in liquidity pools and implement a flywheel on this, but let me show you what I personally think is going to be the best strategy, and it's not that, right? It's going to be to take this $10,000. You're going to have 3 different categories. Category number 1 is your blue chips. What we just mentioned, those 3, Bitcoin, ETH, SOL. We're also going to have what I like to consider altcoins. Those are kind of the ones that have proven themselves, but still like not huge assets. Like we're talking maybe above $1 billion or so, but not like Bitcoin, Ethereum level, not SOL level. And then we're also going to have what I like to consider the risky assets. These are the ones that are like make it or break it, basically. You're either going to make a bunch of money or you're going to lose a bunch of money, right? So again, don't want to allocate everything here, right? It sounds great in theory, just making a bunch of money, but you are gambling at that point. So we'll put $1,000 in there. Altcoins, I would say about $4,000, right? That way you have a good allocation, diversification between these two. And then blue chips, we probably have about $5,000 in these as well. And at the beginning, none of this is going to go into HODLs, right? All of this is going to go into liquidity pools. Liquidity pools let you earn trading fees, which allow you to generate income, which we can use that income to flywheel our portfolio and build out passive income and compound that growth, basically. So with that being said, I'm going to dive into all these in just a second. But again, assuming that over here we can do on average about a 3x, and then over here on the altcoins, let's just say we can do on average about a 4x, and then over here on the risky ones, let's assume that on average we could do about a 7x, because sometimes we'll have some losers, sometimes we'll have some winners. That brings our odds up to 4.7x roughly off of this portfolio. Once again, not bad. So if we were to just stick it in these allocations, that is not bad whatsoever. But again, that is also being generous. That's assuming that your risky positions over here actually work out, and that's assuming everything works out in our favor. So if we want to add some more predictability into that portfolio, we invest in those liquidity pools. So in those blue chips, I'm going to have 2 positions. And again, it's important not to get too crazy with diversifications, especially with lower amounts of capital. So we're going to have a total of 4 positions. The blue chips is where we have 2. The reason why is because we're going to put $2,000 into a crypto to stable liquidity pool. We want to minimize our allocation allocation here, because as the price goes up, that crypto gets sold into the stablecoin, which is why we don't put a huge allocation there. That crypto to stable liquidity pool probably going to be generating about a 130% APR. So we'll just put that right there. And then we're also going to have a crypto to crypto liquidity pool over here. So this is ideally pairing like Bitcoin Sol, Bitcoin ETH. And all of these APRs are going to depend on how much time you have to allocate. So do keep that in mind. But $3,000 over here is going to be allocated that crypto to crypto liquidity pool, where we are probably doing about a 100% APR. Again, depends on how much time you have to allocate. These are probably going to be about, I want to say, a total 3 hours per week with what we're doing across this portfolio that you will be allocating, like managing your portfolio. And I don't just mean managing these positions, I mean managing the entire portfolio. So 130% APR right there. That's not bad whatsoever. We also have this altcoin where we have about $4,000. Once again, we want one solid position to be the backbone of our portfolio. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you probably know that I had this with Ethereum to Aether. It was the backbone of my portfolio, producing very good income, like 150% APR. At the same time, relatively low risk because it had revenue streams and was a very, very solid asset that had high growth potential. So it hit all three. Here we want definitely a crypto to crypto liquidity position, get the most market exposure possible. This $4,000 crypto to crypto position is probably going to be generating about a 140% APR, depending on what we invest into. If we want to be generous, we could say about 150% if you have a little bit more time, or maybe you're just taking a little bit more risk. Depends on the opportunities in the market, right? And then we're also going to have that high risk asset that has that 7x potential, right? And then over here we have $1,000, and that 1K is going into one crypto to crypto liquidity position. We really don't have much flexibility with this one because the majority of these high risk positions are going to just be paired with another cryptocurrency like ETH or Sol or something like that. And by the way, when I say risky, I don't mean Trump coin. I don't mean fart coin. I don't mean any type of meme coin whatsoever. I mean stuff that just hasn't had its time in the market, that hasn't been noticed quite yet. Stuff that has utility, has revenue, right? But ultimately just needs time to grow over time. This thing right here probably going to be doing about a 250% APR. So again, when we crunch all these numbers together, let's see how much money we're actually making. We have about $215 over here, $250 over here, about $500 over here, and $210 over here. And that's in monthly income, by the way. We look at it in monthly. We don't want to look at it in yearly because, again, we are going for hyper growth, which means that we're going to have to adjust this strategy a lot. We're going to have to compound, not just take that 215 and be like, oh, put it right back here. Oh, we want to execute on a flywheel strategy. And again, our goal is to keep it somewhat simple, not too complex, easy to understand. So let's talk about where this money actually goes. This $210 a month, $500 a month, $250 a month, $215 a month, stuff like that. So this $210 right here, we're going to split into two, right? First off, $105 is going to go right into the 4K crypto to crypto liquidity position for the altcoins. It's going to grow the backbone of the portfolio. That should be the best position, basically. It's doing 150% APR, minimal risk, right? Full market exposure, correlation, everything, right? So we're going to say that goes into the alt LP. We're going to have another $105, and that right there is going to go into just alts, into HODLs, basically. Because now we want to start to build out that HODL portfolio now that we're producing income. And ultimately, that's going to have full market exposure. Maybe we could take a little bit more risk with those alts, but we're still going to assume on average about a 4x for those altcoins. We're not going to adjust that number. Now that 500 right here, we're going to take about 350 of that, and we're going to park it into the alts HODL, right? Because we want to have that full market exposure. The other 150 of that is just going to go right back in to the position itself. Once again, we're building the backbone of the portfolio. Now this $215 in that crypto to stable liquidity position, that all of it is going to go into this crypto to crypto liquidity position. It's going to be used to build that position. If we're in, say, Sol USDC, we're using that Sol USDC income to build up a maybe Sol Bitcoin position or Sol Ethereum position, basically. So this is going to be into BCLP, whereas this money right over here, this $250, we're going to go ahead and park that into the BC HODLs. Not a lot of money, but we're still going to park it into the BC HODLs to build up our portfolio. So let's take a look at it over time, right? We have our BCLP where we have $215 a month being compounded. We have $250 over here that's being put into HODLs. So we're just going to label that H and we'll label this I for income. We have $150 over here going into the crypto to crypto altcoin position. We have $350 going into the HODLs. We have $105 going into the LP, and then we have $105 going into the HODLs, basically. So we have a total of 460 and $705 basically, which is obviously pretty decent income. With that being said, we also have the growth potential. So we have a total of $460 going into the income generating liquidity positions, a total of $705 going into the hodls to build that hodl portfolio over time. It's great. We're going to assume that this right here is about 40% being compounded and the other 60% being put into hodls. Most people just take the money, put it right back in. It's the dumbest strategy I've ever seen because you expose yourself to more risk, more divergence loss, and ultimately things blow up in your face. I've seen it time and time again. So with that being said, 40% goes into income generating liquidity pools, the other 60% goes into hodls, and this 40% is being split amongst the overall strategy. And the goal is to build the backbone of that portfolio that's generating 150% APR, has good risk adjusted returns, time adjusted returns, and also make sure that we're taking the income from the high risk position and putting it elsewhere, right? Anywhere but high risk. So now I want to go ahead and pull up this Builder Wealth Flywheel calculator that we created. It's going to be linked right below this video if you want to check it out. It's free to use. It's builderwealth.com/flywheel. There's also a quick video right here if you want to learn how to use it. Now we're going to enter initial capital as $10,000. We're going to determine our APR, which on average, we did a weighted average, is about 140% APR. Now our monthly appreciation, this is compounded growth. So it's saying, hey, if you have, say, 5% and you start with $10,000, well, first month you have about $500 a monthly appreciation. So your 10,000 now 10,500. And then it assumes that your 10,500 appreciates by 5% again. Now for my monthly appreciation, I'm putting 13.75% because if we break that down and we're assuming that 4.7x, well, that's going to be $37,000 in price profit over the course of the market. And we're just going to assume the market's about a year, right? So 37,000, which is about 370% APY. We go APY to APR, assume monthly compounding, and then we could just take that number, which is 165%, and divide it by 12. And that's going to come out to essentially the same number. You could see right over here, we start with 10 grand and we have 47 at the end of month 12. That's just from price appreciation, that 4.7x, right? And now that we've got that down, we do our divergence loss profit margin. At the beginning, if you're a beginner, you're probably going to be at 65%. In my portfolio, I'm at about 85%. Let's be generous. Let's assume like 75% or so. As far as allocations go, we need to determine how much money is actually going into hodls versus LPs at the start. Now, again, as we mentioned, all of that is going into LPs. As far as our income allocation goes, where is that going? At the beginning, highly recommend you don't cash anything out. It's short-term gratification. We don't need that. So again, 40% of our money is going into those income generating liquidity positions, the other 60% into hodls. So just like that, we can see over time, we could take that and turn it into $100,000, which is substantially better than the initial $47,000 that we would end up with. And you can see the growth over time in your income as well. You start off doing roughly $875 per month in like kind of net after the divergence losses. And then over here, you end up doing about $5,000 every single month. And that's because number one, you're seeing that appreciation. And also number two, because you are compounding that income. So that's the beauty. We can end up with a total of nearly $50,000, a little over $50,000 actually, extra by executing on a strategy like this. Now, it's important to mention, it's not guaranteed. It's not going to see a 4.7x over on a month-by-month basis. There's going to be some red months, some green months, but ultimately there's going to be some very, very, very good months and some slightly bad months, if that makes sense. And those very, very, very good months are going to outweigh those slightly bad months. And we could see our flywheel right here. Our liquidity pools are generating 140% APR in income. 40% of that is getting compounded back into liquidity pools. 60% of that is going into hodls and 0% is being cashed out. So again, like if we're just cashing out 100% of that money, right, and we're putting none back into the portfolio, guess what? By the end of month 12, we are generating a total of roughly $3,600. We go from $875 to $3,600. But by executing on a strategy like this with 40% going into the LPs and 60% going into the hodls and 0% getting cashed out, we build that to $5,000 a month after month 12. The goal of this market should be to build your bag and then ultimately take that, $100,000 that you now have and start to earn passive income on it using stablecoins throughout the bear market. You'll probably do about 50% per year. And then ultimately with next market, that's when it's time to start to take profits because now you have the ability to make life-changing money. It's not going to happen overnight. It's probably not even going to happen this market, right? It's not going to retire your whole bloodline. But if you build this up and you compound it, it could, right? Depending on the capital amounts that you deposit and whatnot. Again, this is my strategy for $10,000. You don't have to use it. I don't care if you use it. It does not affect me at the end of the day. I just thought I'd share what I think would be valuable to a lot of people. This right here is what I like to call a DeFi flywheel. It's the term that we coined for a portfolio that just consistently grows itself, just like a flywheel continues to go and go and go on its own. We have LPs, which generate income, which we can compound. And when we do that, we have more money in LPs, which generates more income, allows us to compound more, so on and so forth. Thing repeats itself and builds the portfolio on its own.